So a lot of people will probably be thinking that I'm fairly comfortable with my handle shaping, that it comes easy and naturally. Well, I actually dread handle shaping. It's at the point where everything needs to be tied together and finished well, and I really don't want to mess it up, especially if it's already like glued onto the blade and all that kind of stuff. This handle in particular has given me a lot of headaches. I actually did a video on this and I was showing off shaping the handle in first person view and from the side and all that, and it looked good until I put it together and unraveled the blade, and then some of the lines just did not look right at all. So I had to redo that multiple times. Every time I adjusted the shape, I had to redo the front piece right here. So this is a museum fit Damascus piece in the front with the handle stepping down to fit there. This is an aesthetic thing. It's also a really nice touch for when handle materials shift and shrink, which they do, especially wood. So you can finish a knife where this is totally flush, but once you ship it somewhere or once changes in humidity and temperature take place, things will move, and then now you're gonna get this really harsh step, and that's not good. So this handle is now glued on here. It's been shaped, it's been sanded. I'm just doing the final touches, and I'm going to walk through some of my thought process on what I did for this handle, where I struggled, and some random tips and tricks of just finishing these out and getting the crisp facets on there. So the trick with these museum fits and this little piece in the front that's stepped down is if I'm sanding and finishing this out separately, I can't just sand it by itself. The problem with these is, since it has such a small footprint and sanding it by hand, you're going to naturally like wash out the lines on the back. So you have to have a little sacrificial piece glued to it. Anytime I was goofing up this and I had to refinish this, I had to glue a sacrificial piece of this. I had to resand it, finish it, etch it, and polish it again. And I did that probably like 4 times. And then like 2 of those times I got this really nice and clean, except the lines didn't match up with the handle at all. It would be like this like weird kink in there, and it just looked horrible. I almost just debated finishing the handle like that because honestly, not that many people would see what I see. It's just a personal preference thing, but I'm kind of stubborn about that kind of stuff. So what I ended up doing is, since this line didn't really match with any of that stuff, I created this new facet up here to kind of like match that angle, because this was up here and then it was kinked down. It just didn't look right at all. It just looked terrible. So that's that. It's got a lot of different facets on it. I'm pretty proud of this shape overall. I don't even think I could replicate this, to be honest. This is so difficult and so tricky. But there are some elements that I do like. There's some new facets that I tried out and they look good. The flow overall is really nice, where it goes kind of like, I don't even know. I'm just saying words now. You might be wondering what this goop on here is. This is actually true oil that's been wet sanded with the carbon fiber. It's something that I've been trying with actually moderate success. A lot of carbon fiber, you will get these little pinhole voids in there. Some blocks are really nice and clean, some blocks aren't. It's not very critical as far as like structural integrity goes. This carbon fiber is so strong for handles. If you sand a slurry and work that into those little voids, a few times wet sanding, you'll fill those in for the most part. This isn't totally filled in yet, but you get the idea. I use an arrangement of different sanding sticks. This one is inspired by Nick Wheeler. It's got that front edge with the like rounded back, so you could kind of crease paper and wrap it around so it gets tighter. So this is totally his thing that I saw years ago and I just made some myself. This sweeping curve is honestly one of the trickiest parts of doing these handles. The last thing I want to do is I don't want to wash out this line at the back. I want to keep this so tight so that it comes up at this like nice clean cusp and then just terminates right at the end. I don't want it to go and then just kind of fall off. I'm not going to do anything ergonomically, but I think it looks sloppy. I think it looks just weak. Visually, this endpoint has to have closure, and for me that's one of the most important parts. I keep moving sandpaper. I don't stick to one piece. This stuff loads up the paper, and once it stops cutting, I just move. I'm just going lightly, getting the gunk off, and just breaking right through the carbon fiber a little bit so I can get to the next grit. I don't want to scratch it too much. You might notice another thing that I'm doing is when I go and set down the sanding stick with the paper, I set it down, check the angle, try to ingrain that muscle memory and that angle in my head, and then I go. I don't just choose one and then go with it. It's always about locking on and then going. The technique that I'm doing right here, I'm doing a slight rocking motion so that I don't wash out this line from here to here. If I just go like that, that line's going away. So I'm just doing this slight rocking motion and basically just trying to kiss that edge right there. I got most of it off, good enough to go to the next grit. These two faces right here are the most difficult for me because the angle between the two is so shallow that if I'm not careful, one movement is gonna sway a little bit and it's going to basically wash out this line right here. It's not the worst thing in the world because this shape right here, you can count it almost as one, but it's nice to have that crisp line between the two. If I use a stick right here, I can get it fairly tight, but it's not perfect. And even that little bit right there can goof this up because the margin of error is basically non-existent. So what I'm doing now is I've got this piece right here with a mostly flat piece of steel and the sandpaper is glued to it. So what this allows me to do is I don't have to worry about holding the sandpaper. I don't have to worry about holding this as tight as possible. I just set it on there, locate my angle. You can see that I'm locking on the angle right there. So that's the most important part. I'm gonna set that down right there. That's my angle right there, not that. That's the other face. There we go. And I'm just going to lightly do some strokes, trying to apply even pressure so I'm not shifting it at all. If I really wanted this to be perfect, I would finish this as much as possible on the disc grinder because all these little movements back and forth, there is so much degree of freedom in there. You have to do it the hard way to get these tight lines. Whereas on a disc grinder or any grinder, you're just holding it tight and you ease up into it. And as long as you don't mess up your original angle, it's gonna get some sort of crisp line. So now I've sanded most of that to 1200 grit and you can see the subtle line right there. A few little voids left, but I'm not going to fuss with that anymore. It's a lot better than before. These faces are sanded to 1200 right now. The way I finish these, I don't really buff or anything like that. After I get them to a nice 1200, I just burnish a little bit with 2500 just to shine it up a little bit. And unless if there are really deep scratches, I'm not really chasing any scratches out. Like it should be mostly 1200 grit. And I'm just looking to shine it with the 2500. And then once I burnish it with 2500, I'm just going to take this micro polishing cloth, load it with a little bit of the red compound, and I just kind of go over that a little bit. Just one little last step. And I'm not shooting for like a mirror finish. I don't really want that on a handle. Now that's it. So that's how I finish these handles. I just sand it up. I wet sand it if it needs some pores or voids filled up, and then I burnish it with 2500 and I polish it by hand. With wood handles, then I'll do an oil finish, but composites, I don't do that. I've got everything but the actual butt of the handle polished. Once that's done, then hopefully this knife should be done, except for sharpening. Well, this is the moment of truth, taking out the tape, seeing if everything looks right with the front piece. I hope it does, because I really don't want to refinish this again. And overall, yeah, I like that. I would say success. Watch until I unravel the blade and then it looks terrible.